My brother moved in, my rent shot up, so I left, and now they're begging for help. Hey everyone, my name's Alex, and I'm 22 years old. I usually don't share personal stuff like this, but right now, I feel like I need to get everything off my chest. The last few months have been a roller coaster, and I'm honestly struggling to deal with everything that's going on with my family. It's not easy to write this, but maybe hearing your thoughts will help me make sense of it all. I'm in college studying software design. It's always been my passion, and I'm working part-time as a junior developer to save up for my future. My dream is to start my own company one day, but for now, I'm doing everything I can to make sure I get there. Since my college is close to my parents' house, I decided to live with them to save on rent. But I want to make it clear that I'm not freeloading. I pay $550 every month to contribute to the rent and household expenses. I figured it was fair, and it's honestly cheaper than living with roommates, so why not help out my family? At first, everything seemed fine, or at least as fine as things can be living with your parents when you're an adult. Don't get me wrong, my relationship with them has always been a bit strained. They have a favorite, and it's my older brother, Ryan. He's 23, married, and has 2 kids now. Growing up, Ryan was always the troublemaker, the one skipping school, breaking curfew, getting into fights. You name it, he did it. And somehow, no matter what, my parents always had his back. Meanwhile, I was the one who followed the rules, worked hard, and stayed out of trouble, but I never got the same support or attention. About a year ago, Ryan moved out with his wife and kids after borrowing money from both my parents and his in-laws to start a business. He claimed it was a huge opportunity in construction and even bought a house. I was skeptical, but I figured maybe this time he was serious about taking responsibility. Fast forward to now, and surprise, Ryan's back. He shows up at my parents' house with his entire family, claiming that he just needs to stay for a while until a massive payout from his business comes through. He promised them millions of dollars, saying he'd buy the family a mansion once the money came in. Of course, my parents are eating it up. They believe every word he says, like it's gospel. The problem? While Ryan and his family live here rent-free, I'm still expected to pay my $550 every month. And guess how much Ryan is paying? Yep, zero. Nothing. Zilch. My parents act like it's no big deal. They completely ignore the fact that Ryan's been freeloading for years, leeching off everyone around him. Meanwhile, the house has turned into complete chaos. Ryan's 2 kids, adorable but toddlers, are loud, messy, and have taken over the living room with their toys. It's impossible to find any peace and quiet. I tried setting up a workspace in my room, but even that isn't safe. The kids burst in constantly, and Ryan doesn't even try to stop them. He just laughs it off like it's all fine. His wife isn't much better. She leaves their mess everywhere. Dirty dishes in the sink, laundry piling up in the hallway. What really gets to me is how Ryan and his wife act like they own the place. They've completely taken over the kitchen, and if I so much as ask for a turn to cook, I get eye rolls and passive-aggressive comments about how family shares everything. Yeah, except they don't share in paying for anything. I tried talking to my parents about it, but they just brushed me off. My mom told me that I needed to understand Ryan's going through a tough time, and that family helps family. When I asked if Ryan was going to start contributing to rent or groceries, she got defensive and told me not to bring it up again. At this point, I feel like a stranger in my own home. I work hard to save money and plan for my future, but none of that seems to matter. All my parents care about is Ryan and his business, which may or may not even exist. They're living in this fantasy world where Ryan's some kind of self-made millionaire, and I'm just here to foot the bill while they wait for his big payday. I've thought about moving out, but the idea stresses me out. Rent is expensive and I don't make a lot of money. My part-time job pays decently, but with tuition bills and trying to save for the future, there's not much left over. Plus, I feel like moving out would be admitting defeat. Why should I have to uproot my life just because Ryan refuses to take responsibility? It's not fair. I guess what I'm trying to figure out is whether I'm in the wrong here. Should I suck it up and pay more to keep the peace? Or am I right to feel like this is completely unfair? I've always been the type of person who avoids conflict, but this situation is pushing me to my limit. I'm tired of being the one who always has to compromise while Ryan gets a free pass. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now. Any advice? I'd love to hear if anyone's been through something similar. Thanks for listening. I thought things would get better with time. I told myself I just needed to hang in there a little longer, that maybe my parents would come to their senses, maybe Ryan would start pulling his weight. But it only got worse. It wasn't just the mess or the noise anymore. It was the blatant disregard for any kind of fairness. My parents continued to treat Ryan like a golden child, like he could do no wrong. While I was left paying the rent, the utilities, and helping out with the grocery bills, Ryan, he was allowed to lounge around, ignore all responsibilities, and just wait for the big break. But here's the kicker. Every time I tried to have a serious conversation with my parents about it, they would brush me off, act like I was the one being unreasonable. Ryan's just going through a tough time. My mom would say, her tone dripping with sympathy. He needs our support right now. He's going to be successful soon, and then everything will be fine. Couldn't believe it. They had been saying the same thing for months. Ryan's going to be successful soon. But I was beginning to realize that soon was never going to come. Ryan was never going to change. He was just coasting on everyone else's kindness and patience, waiting for a handout while I was stuck paying for it. The tipping point came when my dad asked me for a little help. I had been putting away savings for a potential move, keeping my expenses tight, knowing that one day I would need to leave. But my dad, after weeks of not even acknowledging the growing imbalance in the house, casually asked me to chip in a little more. He said it was for the family, but I knew exactly what he meant. It was to cover the fact that Ryan was still contributing absolutely nothing. "Come on, Alex," he said, his voice low and slightly guilty, as if he knew it wasn't fair but thought I should just go along with it. "If you could just help out a bit more, it would make things a lot easier around here." I stared at him for a long moment, trying to process the absurdity of what he was asking. More? After all this time? More money? More patience? I didn't say anything at first. I was too shocked. It wasn't just that my parents were blind to how unfair it was. It was that they were asking me, like it was a simple favor, like they had no idea what I had been going through, how much I had sacrificed, how little I was getting in return. "You're asking me to pay more money when Ryan is sitting here doing nothing?" I finally asked, my voice rising. "Dad, this isn't fair." He looked at me like I was being the unreasonable one, like I was the one who didn't get it. "Ryan's family needs support right now, Alex. You've got your own place to live soon, don't you? Just help us a little more. We're all in this together." The words "we're all in this together" struck a nerve. I was in this alone. I had been carrying the weight of this family's expectations, paying my way, making sure everything was in order, while Ryan got free rein. And now they were asking me to pay more for their indulgence of his laziness. I couldn't take it anymore. I was furious. That night, I decided I wasn't going to let it go. I had been patient, I had been accommodating, but enough was enough. I needed to take control of my life, to stop letting my family dictate how much I could give, how much I was supposed to tolerate. I needed to stop sacrificing my happiness for a family that didn't even see my worth. So, the next morning I packed my things. I called my boss and arranged for a transfer to a place closer to work. I didn't want to be in this toxic environment any longer, and I sure as hell didn't want to keep paying for Ryan's mistakes. I confronted my parents one last time before I left. I walked into the living room, where they were both sitting, their usual smug smiles plastered on their faces like they hadn't been caught in a lie. "I'm moving out," I said flatly, not giving them the chance to react. "What?" My mom's voice faltered. "Alex, you don't have to leave. Please, we'll work this out." "No," I said, my voice steady and firm. "I've had enough. I'm done being treated like a fool. I'm done paying for Ryan's laziness, and I'm done pretending like everything's fine when it's not." I looked at Ryan, sitting there on the couch, watching me like he was mildly interested. I didn't even bother to address him. There was no point. My dad stood up then, a look of desperation in his eyes. "Come on, Alex, don't do this. Your family. You're our responsibility." "Well, it looks like you've already chosen your favorite," I shot back. "I'm not going to stick around and pay for everyone else's mistakes while I'm stuck here. It wasn't easy. It wasn't even a little bit easy. I loved my family, but I wasn't going to sacrifice my future, my peace of mind, just to keep up the illusion of harmony. My parents were desperate, sure, but I had made my decision. I wasn't staying any longer. I walked out that door with nothing but a small bag of clothes and the determination to take my life back. Leaving was the hardest thing I'd ever done. I thought it would be a relief, that the moment I stepped out of that house, I'd feel light, free from the weight of all those expectations. But instead, I felt a knot tighten in my chest. I had spent my whole life trying to please my parents, trying to prove that I wasn't just the good child, that I could be more than just the guy who did everything right. As I settled into my new place, I couldn't help but feel guilty. My parents had always made it clear that Ryan was the priority, the golden child, and I had spent years trying to be everything they wanted me to be. And now that I had finally broken free, I was left with the uncomfortable truth. No matter how much I sacrificed, they would never truly see me for who I was. The first few days in my new place were a blur. I was alone, for the first time in years, and I spent most of the time organizing, unpacking, and thinking about what had just happened. I wasn't angry anymore, just tired. Tired of fighting for a place in my family. Tired of giving so much and receiving nothing in return. And then came the phone calls. At first, they were subtle. My mom would call to check in on me, always with the same pretense. "How's the new place? Are you okay? You know we're here for you." She never directly addressed why I left, but I knew what she was doing. She was trying to guilt-trip me into coming back, into pretending like everything was fine. I didn't respond. I knew if I gave in now, I'd just be playing the same old game. I wasn't going to be dragged back into that unhealthy dynamic. The calls continued, and eventually they became more urgent. Could hear the panic in her voice, a desperation that I had never heard before. "Your father is really worried about you, Alex. He doesn't understand why you had to leave. We're a family, you know. You should come back home. We're all struggling without you." It was manipulative, and it worked for a while. I started to second-guess myself, started to wonder if I had made the right decision. Maybe I was being too harsh. Maybe they really did need me. But deep down, I knew the truth. They were using my guilt to try and force me back into the role they had always wanted me to play. The worst part was that Ryan, who had done nothing but lie and use my parents for money, was still living at home, still benefiting from their blind loyalty. Every day they babied him, gave him excuses for his failures, while I was the one who was expected to shoulder all the responsibility. I realized that nothing would ever change as long as I allowed myself to be dragged back into that cycle. Then came the letter. It arrived one afternoon, while I was sitting at my kitchen table, sipping coffee and staring out the window. It was from my mom, no surprise there. But what caught my eye was the weight of the envelope. She had enclosed a check, a large sum of money, along with a note that made my stomach turn. "Alex, we've been thinking about what happened. We know you're upset, but we need you back in our lives. Things aren't the same without you here. This check is to help with your move. It's not too late to come back home. Ryan misses you too." I stared at the check for a long time, the numbers blurring in front of my eyes. It was a generous amount. Money I knew they could have used for themselves. But it wasn't the money that bothered me. It was the desperation, the manipulation. They thought they could buy my return with their money, with their guilt. It felt like a final attempt to pull me back into the toxic cycle I had spent years trying to escape. I sat there, holding the check in my hands, feeling the weight of it, both literal and figurative. It was as if my parents were telling me, "We're sorry, but we can't survive without you. Come back. Things will be better this time." But I couldn't do it. I had already made my choice. I wasn't going to let them control me anymore. I wasn't going to sacrifice my happiness for their convenience. I folded the check in half and placed it in an envelope. The letter remained unread. I wasn't going to let them guilt-trip me any longer. I wrote a quick note, simply stating, "I'm doing fine. I've made my decision. I need to live my life on my own terms." I sealed the envelope and walked to the mailbox. I stood there for a moment, watching the envelope disappear into the slot. And in that moment, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't anger. It wasn't sadness. It was a sense of clarity, a sense of peace. I wasn't going back. Not for their approval. Not for their money. Not for their broken promises. I was moving forward, finally, for myself. The weeks that followed were a blur of mixed emotions. On the outside, everything looked fine. I had settled into my new apartment, was working harder than ever, and even made a few new friends in the neighborhood. But inside, I was battling with the guilt of breaking ties with my family. The constant pressure, the endless manipulation. They had all been a part of me for so long that even though I knew I was doing the right thing, there were moments when I questioned myself. Was I being too harsh? Had I made a mistake by walking away? I had tried my best to move on. I focused on my job, kept to myself, and worked on rebuilding the life that felt like it had been torn apart. The first few days without my family were difficult. Every so often, I would get a text from my mom, a phone call from my dad, asking me how I was doing, how things were going. But it wasn't out of concern for me. It was out of guilt, out of a desperate desire to bring me back into the fold. And I could see it clearly now. They needed me back. They needed me to fill the role I had always played. Responsible, reliable, the one who made things easier. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that they had never really seen me for who I was, only for what I could give. And it wasn't just the financial contribution that had been weighing on me. It was the emotional toll of always being the one to step in, to fix things, to make everyone feel better while my own needs were pushed aside. No more. I couldn't keep doing it. Then it happened. One evening, I received a call from my mom. She was sobbing on the other end of the line. "Alex, I need you to come home," she begged. "It's bad. Your father, he's having a breakdown. He doesn't know what to do without you. And Ryan, he's not helping. He doesn't care." Her words hit me like a brick. My first instinct was to rush over, to put everything aside and run back to the family that had always relied on me. But something inside me stopped me. I listened as my mom went on, telling me how hard it had been without me there. How my dad had been struggling to cope with the house, the bills, everything. Ryan, who should have stepped up, hadn't. He was too busy focusing on his business and spending time with his kids. It wasn't new information. I had heard the same excuses for years, but hearing them from my mom, who had always defended Ryan, made me see the situation in a new light. She was finally seeing the truth. Ryan had been allowed to get away with everything, while I was the one left holding the pieces. It wasn't my responsibility anymore. "Mom," I said, my voice calm but firm, "I can't fix this for you. I'm not coming back. You need to talk to Ryan. He's your son too." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear my mom struggling to hold it together. "You don't understand, Alex," she whispered. "He's the only one I have left. He's my son. I can't lose him too." Her words stung more than I expected, but they also opened my eyes. She wasn't asking for help because she needed me. She was asking because she couldn't handle the truth. She couldn't handle the reality that Ryan was never going to change, that he was never going to be the person she had hoped he would be. And instead of facing that, she had turned to me, the one who always came through. "I'm sorry, Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm sorry you're going through this, but I can't be the one to fix it. I've spent years being your backup plan. It's not my responsibility anymore." I hung up the phone without waiting for a response. The silence that followed was heavy, but it wasn't filled with regret. It was filled with clarity. I wasn't going to let my family manipulate me into coming back. I wasn't going to play the role of the dependable child who would save the day. It was time for them to face the consequences of their choices. The next day, my mom called again. This time, there was no pleading, no desperate cries. It was different. "I get it," she said quietly. "I've been selfish and I've been using you. I'm sorry. I don't know what I expected, but I understand now. I'll talk to Ryan. I'll figure this out. I just wanted you to know that I'm proud of you, Alex. You've always done what was right, even when no one else did." The words were simple, but they meant more to me than anything she had ever said before. It wasn't an apology for everything that had happened, but it was an acknowledgement. She was finally seeing the truth. And for the first time, I felt like I wasn't invisible in my own family. After that call, I felt lighter. I wasn't sure what the future held with my family, but I knew one thing. I was done being the one who always had to save the day. I had made my decision. I was moving forward. It was hard, and I didn't know what would happen next. But I was done waiting for things to change. I was going to make my own way no matter what. A few weeks passed since I had finally broken free from the suffocating cycle of my family's expectations, and life was starting to feel like mine again. I had moved on physically, but emotionally, I was still processing the weight of what had happened. The calls, the manipulation, the guilt trips, they still lingered in the back of my mind like ghosts, but I was learning how to silence them. Every day felt like a small victory, a step closer to the person I had always wanted to be. Work had picked up, and I was thriving in my new role. I'd always been good at my job, but with all the mental and emotional clutter gone, I was able to focus in ways I hadn't before. I even landed a few freelance gigs on the side, expanding my skills and making extra income that I had put away for a rainy day, though I'd stopped thinking of it as a rainy day. It was the start of something new, something that was entirely my own. I started reconnecting with myself in ways I had neglected for so long. I spent more time doing things I loved, working on side projects, reading books, taking walks. I no longer felt the need to justify my time, to explain why I was choosing to do something that wasn't directly tied to someone else's expectations. One evening, after a long day of work, I sat on the balcony of my apartment with a cold drink in my hand, watching the sunset. It was peaceful, calm in a way I hadn't known for years. For the first time, I felt truly at peace with the decisions I had made. I had chosen myself. I wasn't running away from my family anymore. I had simply chosen to walk a different path. And, for the first time in a long while, I was proud of myself. That was when I got the message. It was from Ryan. Of course, it wasn't anything heartfelt, nothing that even remotely resembled an apology. It was just a simple, to-the-point message. Hey, I'm coming by tomorrow to talk. I need to clear things up. Don't ignore me. I stared at the message for a long time, trying to decide how to respond. A part of me wanted to ignore it completely, to continue living my life without looking back. But another part, maybe the part of me that still wanted closure, knew I had to face him. He wasn't just some distant family member anymore. He was the catalyst for everything that had gone wrong. He had pushed me to the point of leaving, and I needed to hear him out, if only to move on for good. The next afternoon, Ryan showed up at my apartment. He knocked once, then twice, and finally I opened the door. His face was as I remembered, cocky, self-assured, with that familiar look of entitlement. He didn't even bother to ask how I was doing, didn't even offer a greeting. Look, he started, rubbing his hands together nervously. I know things have been tense, but I need you to understand why I've done things the way I've done them. I raised an eyebrow. Do you? Because I don't think I'm the one who needs to understand anything. I'm not the one who's been taking advantage of family. He recoiled slightly, taken aback by my bluntness. He wasn't used to me standing my ground. But I wasn't going to cower or make excuses for him anymore. If I was going to face him, it was going to be on my terms. Okay, look, he said, his voice softening. I know I've messed up, all right? But I need you to understand. I'm not doing this on purpose. I'm trying to build something for my kids. I've just been stuck in this cycle of not having enough, and now it feels like everyone's just turning their back on me. I shook my head, feeling a mix of frustration and pity for him. Ryan, no one's turning their back on you, but you can't keep using everyone else as a crutch. You've been allowed to do whatever you want without any consequences, and now you're mad because people are finally calling you out on it. His face tightened. You don't get it, Alex. I'm trying, okay? I'm trying to make things better for my family, but I can't do it alone. I sighed, stepping back and motioning for him to sit down. You've never done it alone, Ryan. You've always had someone else to rely on. You had mom and dad, you had me, you had everyone covering for you. And look where that got you. Ryan ran a hand through his hair, his frustration palpable. So, what do you want me to say? That I'm sorry? Fine, I'm sorry. I made mistakes, but I don't want to be cut off from my family. I need help. You're my brother, Alex. Don't make this harder than it has to be. I stared at him, the weight of his words hanging in the air. I could feel the guilt creeping up on me, but I pushed it down. This wasn't about him. It was about me, about standing up for myself, for the life I was finally starting to build. I wasn't responsible for his failures anymore. I'm not going to fix this for you, Ryan, I said firmly. I'm not going to play the role of the responsible one anymore. You need to figure this out for yourself. I've done my part. I've supported you long enough. For the first time, I saw something in his eyes, vulnerability. Maybe it was a fleeting moment, but it was enough for me to know that he wasn't just the same guy who had always taken. He was lost, but I couldn't be his savior anymore. I wasn't responsible for carrying the weight of our family's mistakes. I'm sorry, but I'm done, I said, my voice final. It's time for you to start taking responsibility for yourself. I can't keep fixing things that aren't broken just for you to break again. Ryan stood up slowly, the realization settling in. He didn't say anything more. He didn't apologize. But as he turned to leave, I noticed the smallest flicker of understanding in his eyes. Maybe, just maybe, he would start to change. But I wasn't going to wait around for that. I had my own life to live. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was finally free. Looking back, I realized that walking away from my family wasn't just about escaping their manipulation. It was about reclaiming my life and my self-worth. For so long, I had been the one holding everything together, sacrificing my own happiness to fulfill expectations that weren't mine. But I've learned that I don't owe anyone my peace of mind. Sometimes the hardest part of growing up is learning to let go of what no longer serves you, no matter how much it hurts. I'm finally choosing myself. And in doing so, I'm creating space for the life I truly deserve.